Can we give a warm applause to Ms. Annika Söder, please? State Secretary to the Swedish Foreign Minister.
Actually, that's not correct.
Isn't it?
No.
Well,
My title is State
yeah.
Secretary for Foreign Affairs.
I don't know why they added that.
But
anyway.
Margot is my boss, of course.
Of course.
Yes.
And we have been colleagues, you and I as well, in FAO, which so I know you have a lot of insights into this very, very difficult question of food security. So please give us a couple of words, and then I have a few questions I would like to ask.
Thank you. Johan used to work on water issues, actually, at FAO.
Water is also sometimes important in agriculture.
And let me also thank all the preceding speakers, and I'm not an expert. I'm an expert in diplomacy and communications and not in food security. But I liked my 5 years in FAO a lot, and I liked to work very closely with David, who was then running the Secretary General's high-level committee on high-level task force on food security. So David is actually the expert. I wanted to talk a little bit about the question, is there a global partnership? And challenges related to that. I think many of us that live in this part of the world, we feel that we are in a world of turmoil, tensions in our own vicinity, difficult refugee situation, Daesh in Syria, Iraq, development budgets going down, not enough humanitarian assistance. But then, if we look around, we see that other continents are doing better. Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, many parts of Asia. And I think this perspective is very important when you try to understand why we had 4 great global agreements last year, all of them also involving external stakeholders, policy shapers, academia, civil society, and business. So it's a new era, and I would say it's an era for a modern multilateralism that we need to work with in order to make all the promises actually happen. And I'm thinking of the Financing for Development Agreement. Many people thought it wouldn't happen. It actually happened. It has its flaws, but it's there, and it will also come into how we can work on agriculture, food security, fisheries, and so on. We have the Agenda 2030 that David spoke about with the 17 goals that I basically think are necessary, because if you want to cover society is very complex, and it's at least about 17 sectors, if not more. Then even more importantly, the agreement in Paris and all the smaller partnerships created in Paris with different partners from the different sectors of society and different parts of the world. Also, I think very important for business, it set an agenda for business to know what are we expected to do. A more long-term approach to the difficult climate issue that I think will be very much appreciated by business, not least by Swedish business that feel that they are always front runners and that they will have negative effects because they're doing better. Now we know where we're heading, and I think this is extremely important. Finally, not that much publicized, is the WTO meeting in Nairobi that agreed on some very important aspects on trade. I wouldn't say that we now have a development trade agenda, but at least we're getting there, and not least on IT. We have agreements that I also think will play into the food security, food safety, and agriculture agenda. So this gives hope, and all of the stakeholders need to work together, not least to hold actors accountable, and I'm thinking mainly of us, the governments, to hold us accountable. And let me also praise the UN for reaching out on all of these topics, working very closely with civil society, not only in developed countries where civil society has access, but also in most countries. So we have an accountability group that will be able to work also in the future. Let me boost a little bit about what Sweden is doing, because I think we are front runners. We had the shared responsibility policy already in 2003. What the UN now has in the 2030 agenda is actually a global version of the Swedish policy, holding everyone accountable in all political fields. The Prime Minister is in a group that he took the initiative to run with 8 other Prime Ministers in order to champion the implementation of the Agenda 2030. He's also running another group called the Global Deal, looking at labor market issues, and I think of key importance for the agricultural sector and for the livelihoods, not least among smallholders and workers in the agricultural sector. We're running for a seat on the Security Council, and this takes me to another aspect of this. We recognize more and more that most of the issues that we looked upon as developmental before are now also security. I'm not saying that we're solving the issues in the Security Council, but we need to work also there to lay the political platform for the solution of the long-term issues that will then create security and prosperity for people. Finally, what I find very challenging with the new agendas is that the UN is challenged when it comes to the normative agenda. The agenda is universal in all the 17 goals, and the UN has agencies for almost all of this. And how will they become, as the UN jargon is, fit for purpose to deliver to different kinds of societies, different kinds of countries, in order for all of us to do our share of this universal agenda. So I find this extremely encouraging in the midst of many, many difficulties. When I worked in FAO, I was also head of communications, and I was thinking of that when we were having insects, because when we wanted to have positive publicity about FAO, we published articles about edible insects, and we always knew that they would enter into the media, because there is a fascination in the Western world with this, and I think that we are now slowly overcoming that sort of distanced fascination, and we will move into eating them as well. Speaking about the Mdgs on hunger, we achieved a lot, we changed the data, and now the achievements in the MDG context is that half of the countries monitored actually reached the halving of hunger target. We should now remember with the new goal that the goal is about ending hunger. It's a very ambitious goal, and the fact that leaders agreed to this goal is a challenge to them and to all of us, and we need to find the ways to do this in such a way that we are not affecting negatively other fields. It's about so many other goals. It's about goal 5 on gender. Most people in this room know that we have a feminist government and a feminist foreign policy. And this means that all of us involved will work very much with the gender aspects of hunger, of malnutrition, production, and smallholder issues. I was a little surprised with your figure on how many women are actually smallholders, because the figure we used at FAO at that time was much higher. About 70% smallholders in Africa were actually women, or the household leaders. So maybe we can hear a little bit more about that. It's about education, goal number 4. David once said to me that if the agreements on development aid to agriculture that was achieved, I think in 2008 or 9, with the G8, G20 countries, if they were to come, if all that money would come to Africa, we would need 40,000 more experts on agriculture in order to do this extension work that was explained here before. So this is only to show how all the goals come together. For us, of course, goal number 12 on sustainable production and consumption patterns is challenging, and I think most people think about this every day. How do we do this? What does import mean as opposed to exports and self-sufficiency? Shall we eat meat or not? And I think this is also something that is very useful that we are discussing this. Then there is the health goal. And we heard about the insects and our hearts. I would also like to mention a looming killer, and that is antibiotics resistance. That is, of course, very important for the animal side and as well as for the human side. And in this, we also need partnerships, including with the bigger farming industry and not least drugs industry and so forth. Time is running fast, Johan. I see that you're looking at me. I wanted to say a few words about the front runner in FAO and or with the three Rome-based food agencies. With IFAD, that Lennart Båge used to be the president of, WFP and FAO, where the Committee on Food Security actually was the first committee in the UN to involve all kinds of partners, civil society, business, farmers' organizations, the members, of course, of the governments and the people working in FAO, and where some of the guidelines that David mentioned were also designed, and where they are covering most of the issues that are necessary. And if this works well, this is a great normative partnership that can actually help us move forward. I could say a lot also about how I see FAO developing, with a lot of partnerships now with a new leader that is also very much aware of smallholder issues, and how Swedish actors like WeEffect, IKEA, or Alight now have agreements, and how they work with their interests, of course, that is reasonable and related to profit and benefit, and other interests that will be about sustainability and creating good livelihoods, both when it comes to forestry and agriculture. Is the time out now? Or
yeah, it is sort of. But you made a good thing that you prohibited me from asking your question, which is, great. But we will get back to questions in the panel. So if you have any concluding remark or something you want to push extra.
Yes, I wanted to say that coming back to our own role and the responsibility of rich countries in the food security, food safety arena, as well as in the broader Agenda 2030. There is a lot to do, and the government launched the initiative that is actually about the national implementation as well as about how we can support implementation globally and in other countries.
Thank you very much, Annika.